using that wise understanding, that right view, will really help you, not taking things so personal. Whatever that storyline arises, just remember, it's just the storyline, it's just Papañca. Whatever the label is, and see how it comes with tension, and the mind is serious. And then just release, relax, smile, laugh at your mind, stop taking it so personal, and just return back to your object. And so this is the teaching on the 6 streams where the mind goes out. So, how's the smile? Good. It's chilly today. We get some nice wind. Ooh. I like your hat, Nabi. It's really good. Great. Oh. I like this open Dharma hall style. So we spent a few days now exploring a little bit more about exploring a bit more about really how the 6 R's work, and how to uplift our minds all the time, how important that is, that sequence. I call that sequence from gladness to collectedness. So gladness, joy, tranquility, happiness, collectedness. And so it's really important for us to understand this process. These are also called the 7 factors of enlightenment. Just so you know, a geeky addition to the mix. And how to generate these wholesome states. This is very important, of course, and how to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome. But tonight, we will explore a little bit deeper into the inner workings of the mind and distractions. And so developing a little bit more Paññā, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more understanding of how this process works. Because sometimes it's only a matter of perspective, how we see things, in the right way or in the wrong way. And so the Buddha called that samma ditti, right view. And to develop right view by itself also helps letting go of distractions, disturbances in the mind. Because when we understand how it works, we can actually see what we're doing more clearly and really kind of let go. It's like we think that the sun, we say the sun is rising and the sun is setting, and then the sun is rising and then the sun is setting, because we're little creatures living on this spinning ball in the universe. And we, from our vantage point, it looks like the sun is rising and it looks like the sun is setting, but it's the earth that is spinning. It's not the sun. And so a lot of the times we think that it's outside that these things are happening, but in reality it's us that is spinning. Our head is spinning, but we think it's outside. And so it's just a perspective shift sometimes, to just readjust, and then we can actually take back our power, take back our responsibility, and actually go to the core and change. And so now you had 3 days of experience in meditation, experiencing the distractions of the mind. And I just think distractions are really such an interesting thing when we look at it. So how do you think they even arise? What's the deal? So you've been watching your own mind for 3 days. So what do you think that process is? What you're meditating with loving kindness with your spiritual friend, or the directions wherever you're at. And then all of a sudden, you didn't even notice, and then the mind is gone. It's thinking about whatever it's thinking about. Ah, yes, we have some brave souls.
I think the mind is not used to being calm and being like relaxed, and it's kind of bored and it's looking for distraction and just create some distraction.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's an amazing answer. Very good. And so would it be kind of, because it's not used to be relaxed, it's not used to be calm, so would you say that there's like the habits of the mind, there's a lot of habitual tendencies in the mind that are more active, right? Propensities. And perhaps these habitual tendencies are a little bit like, almost like rivers. They have this kind of, maybe this force to them, this momentum. And it's like trying to stop a river is kind of, it's a bit hard, isn't it? Especially last night's river. Give me. Great. And so the Buddha has this great quote from one of his teachings. He says, "Whatever one frequently thinks about and reflects upon over and over again, this becomes the inclination of the mind." So to have a river, you need a slope, you need a valley. If a person frequently thinks and dwells in thoughts of external wantings or sensory desires, that person has left the thought of letting go. Again, there's that difference between the two kinds of states. To cultivate thoughts of sensory desires. If a person frequently thinks and dwells in thoughts of anger, resentment, dislike, that person has left the thought of non-anger or loving kindness, compassion, to cultivate thoughts of anger. So their mind is bent upon anger. And so these distractions, when they arise, did we call them? Did we call them up? Did we do it? No. Yeah, good answer. It's so interesting. It seems like it's just a momentum. That's it. For some reason, we have kind of generated that force in the past, and now it's kind of, we're calming down, and now it's coming back at us. And it's coming back at us with the force that we're used to generating it. And so further, this, if we go to the source of it, like I said, it's a really a question of perspective. We think we buy into that storyline. We're going to think about, oh, what this person said to me, and we're going to churn that in our mind and really take it personal and really get into the story. But in reality, there's this one principle that's underlying all of this, which is the fuel for that, and it's our thinking, it's our minds. And the Buddha called this Papañca. And without Papañca, all of these unwholesome states lose their basis. They lose their nutriment. And so tonight is a bit addressing at the same time the question we had the other day, the really good question, by the way, that awareness is the food for anything in the mind, and whatever you put your awareness on, that will grow. And so this teaching tonight is around that topic also. So perhaps we'll be clarifying this. This is a bit of a long sutta, and it's got a story to it, but I just want to cut to the core and to pull out this section where the Buddha explains this principle of Papañca and how it's behind everything that we're experiencing. And he says, the propagation at Papañca, the propagation of concepts fabricated by the mind, is the cause of a person's bewilderment. So the propagation of concepts that we fabricate is the cause of our own problems. It causes all of the problems that we're experiencing. These concepts should not be delighted in, nor praised, nor indulged in. Because our habitual tendencies is to actually find a certain level of enjoyment in that. And the Buddha is just really like putting a big spotlight on that tendency and saying, look, this is how you're creating yourself problems. And if you don't indulge in that, you will see. Here ends the inclination to discontent, the inclination to irritation, the inclination to views, the inclination to doubt, the inclination to pride, the inclination to longing for becoming, all these things we want to be doing in the future, the inclination to carelessness. This is the end of being given to rods and swords, fights and arguments, rivalry and fault-finding, slander and lies. This is where unrighteous, unwholesome states of mind stop entirely. And so once we identify this tendency of the mind, we can understand This is what is actually fueling this whole process. And so this is the source. So earlier we saw a bit more like the current, which is our habitual tendencies. But the habitual tendencies have all of this underlying principle of just delighting in Papañca. And if we cut it at the root, then we can actually cut a huge part of our distractions. And so further, if we take the dive into this process of the mind, and I like to see it as the 6 streams that we have, the 6 streams that flow outside, the 6 streams that feed the distractions. And when we understand these streams, we can actually better work with them. And what is the first stream? The I. Kokila, very good. Because of the I and material objects, visual consciousness becomes manifest. Well, this is chunky. So you probably notice it's a bit of a heavier, denser topic. We're diving into, the Buddha was a real genius of the mind. He really spent a lot of time figuring it out. And so tonight is our little introduction to understanding what the Buddha understood about the mind. And so I would invite you, if you still have that pen and the book. I like drawing and diagrams. So you can take one of the pages in the book and you can write I here. I like E-Y-E. Not I like. Or you can even draw it if you like, but might get confusing. And then you can write object or material object or form. And then I like to see it like this. This is just my take on this. There's no copyrights or anything on this teaching, so you can do whatever you want. And I like to just draw a line here in between the two. So the I, there's an I, and then there's a material object. Like there's all this room in front of me, and that's what I'm seeing. There's the I, there's the objects or the forms. Because of the I in material objects, visual consciousness becomes manifest. And so here, I draw a little pyramid, and then here we have consciousness arising. And I also like to call this principle the creation of consciousness, and we'll see later a little bit how that works. But this is how we actually create more consciousness, more stronger flow. And so, dependent on the I and shapes or forms, consciousness arises, visual consciousness. The meeting of these three is called contact. And this is what he says here. And I like to write contact here. Because of this contact, there is an experience, sensation, Vedana. And so I like to draw a circle. This is kind of a circle. and write maybe experience here. This is a challenge with the wind. What one experiences, that one perceives. What one perceives, that one thinks about. And what one thinks about, one mentally propagates. And then I just do a little spiral that goes on and on and on and on and on. And so this is one of the streams. And what one mentally propagates, that is the cause for that person's bewilderment by propagation of concepts fabricated by the mind regarding past, present, and future material objects that can be experienced by the mind. And so that's interesting. So he's really breaking it down in a very simple, down to a very simple equation here. Is that everything that we are thinking about is based upon a sense organ, its corresponding object, and now he would go to the ear, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And so everything that we experience in life is based upon any of these six senses and their corresponding objects, sound, smells, tastes, touch, tactile objects, and thoughts. And this is another really interesting part of the Buddha's wisdom, where he is also classifying the mind as another sense. It's just another sense. It's like the maestro of the orchestra. It's governing all the senses. They all kind of relate back to the mind, but the mind also is nothing but a sense. And so, and this is also how we create that consciousness. The more we indulge in that Papañca at the six sense doors, the heavier, the more momentum there is in the river, the more current, and the more flow there is of Papañca. And what we're experiencing here now is exactly what Vladislav said. We're calming down and we're starting to see these habits. And we're starting to see how we're usually indulging in all of these things. And I bet some of you are starting to realize that it's actually troublesome. That it's all that thinking is actually quite heavy on the mind. And it's a lot better to just kind of let it go and bring it down and release it, relax it. And so I like to take a few moments here because this is very profound. All of these distractions that come up in the mind are so impersonal in a way when we see it like that. Because it's just something has happened at either one of the sense doors. Then there was an experience which was pleasant or unpleasant or kind of neutral in between the two. And then we put a label on it. That is the perception. And this is always also tainted by our own biases and likes and dislikes and habitual tendencies, which we'll explore a little bit more later when I'll speak a bit more about dependent origination. And this is actually a first little dip into what the Buddha called dependent origination, paticca samuppada. And the more we understand how impersonal this process is, anatta, the freer we become. And that's why I keep repeating to everybody all the time to not take your mind so seriously, because it's not. It's not personal. And so the more you laugh at these habits of the mind, the more you actually take away their power, and the more the mind will calm down and stay with you. So when the mind gets distracted, did you actually say, mind, be distracted? No, it just did it. And so this is kind of funny, actually. It's really like looking at a monkey, just really scattered-minded, and just like, I really need to like put my hands all over this topic, and climb over this tree and then jump from that tree to that tree. I don't know if you've seen the monkeys here. I just think they're really interesting creatures and really skittish. You never know what they're gonna do. It's like really hard to tell what the next move will be, because they're always like, there's no mental stability. It's always going somewhere. It's really interesting. I have a lot of compassion for them sometimes because it's like, man, that must be something. Just always be like. So lots of tension for the monkeys. And I just love to just kind of bring that up into this recollection that our mind is just like that sometimes. It's just so used to be all over the place, and when we develop compassion for it and laugh and just not take it so seriously, we just okay, it's okay. And then meditation becomes much better. Whatever Bhante would say, whatever we put our awareness on, this will grow. And by saying that, he's talking about either wholesome states or unwholesome states. So we have the choice. And it's also, we have the choice. Basically right now we're doing a bigger exploration of the release step. This is kind of a deeper understanding into the recognize and the release step. So it becomes even sharper. And so there's a way that we feed this, and that there's a way in which we feed the water of our attention into these distractions. And this is actually giving away our power of mindfulness. Feeding one's attention to the eye, feeding one's attention to shapes or material objects, and feeding one's attention to visual consciousness. One can discern the awareness of visual contact. Feeding one's attention to the awareness of visual contact, one can discern the awareness of visual experience. Feeding one's attention to visual experience, one can discern the awareness of concepts, visual concepts. So we start fabricating. Feeding one's attention to visual concepts, one can discern the awareness of thinking. Feeding one's attention to the awareness of thinking, one can discern the awareness of propagation of concepts fabricated by the mind. And so this is how we feed these things, with the water of our attention. But not feeding one's attention to the eye, not feeding one's attention to shapes or material objects, not feeding one's attention to visual consciousness, not giving it importance, not taking that seriously, not identifying with that, thinking like, this is really me, this is really, this person did that to me, or believing the storyline, taking it really personal. It's only just thinking. It's not you, and it's not personal, and it's not serious, really. Not feeding one's attention to visual contact, one cannot discern the awareness of visual experience. Not feeding one's attention to visual experience, one cannot discern the awareness of visual concepts. Not feeding one's awareness to visual concepts, one cannot discern the awareness of thinking. Not feeding one's attention to the awareness of thinking, one cannot discern the awareness of propagation of concepts fabricated by the mind. This is also a really good instruction on how to practice walking meditation, because the mind is pulled to the senses. But this is also a really good opportunity when we're doing the walking meditation. For example, just resting with loving kindness, and then looking ahead, just where you're walking. Doesn't really matter where. Just resting your gaze. You're not really looking at something specific. Just resting the gaze, not engaging the eye. And then there will be these sensory inputs that will come into your awareness. Of course, there's going to be your feet touching the ground, there's going to be the eyes resting in front of you, there's going to be the sound of the river. Wherever you are here, there's probably going to be the sound of the river. And then there might be smells from the kitchen coming up. And so this is also a really good opportunity for you to witness, because walking meditation, there is a lot more sensory input that will happen, because you also have that movement. And so this is a good place where you can look at this process arising and then passing away. Just as an exercise, you can just look at your mind when it smells the good food and you're a little bit hungry. And then it starts thinking like, oh, yeah, that's fish. Or whatever you like, and then you think like, oh yeah, that's dal, or oh, it's gonna be a good one. And then you start imagining all the plates, and this is the Papañca, the propagation of concepts. And this is also where we apply the 6 R's. This is where we actually are able to cut through, to let that go, to release and relax. Yes, what our experience will be more and more as we let go of all distractions in the mind is that we will start to see these 6 senses just as they are. And so without placing your awareness or feeding your awareness, because that's exactly why I talked about this tonight, is without directing your awareness to that, you can be aware of it, but without kind of directing or putting your attention on it. Your attention should always be with the loving kindness or your vehicle of awareness, because now people are starting to branch off in their own vehicles of awareness and practices, and so I cannot say just one thing, one size fits all, but Your awareness should always be resting upon your vehicle of awareness. And so that's why we call it a vehicle, is that it supports your awareness. And these wholesome states like loving kindness, compassion, joy, radiant calm or equanimity, and the still mind, these are vehicles that actually support awareness naturally. And that's why we call them like that. And so your mind should always be resting upon these vehicles, so that you make sure that you will actually go towards the right direction, the right place. And that's why, because the mind, it will latch upon all of these sensory inputs when they come. And the more and more we are actually purifying the mind to the point where at the very source of it, at the contact and at the feeling, or the contact and sensation, or I like to use the word experience. Whatever the experience you will have at the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the skin, and the mind, you will see that for what it is. If you eat ice cream, it's going to be a pleasant sensation. Or unless you don't like ice cream, I don't know. Strange. And if you hit your toes on the door sill, then it's going to be an unpleasant sensation. But and that's not the problem. This is just pure, plain, raw data. This is just what it is. Now the question is, what do we do with that data, with that sensory data? And that's up to us. And so this is where we will start either feeding into or latching upon. And so when we eat the ice cream, well, when we finish the bucket, for example, and if we start to cry and we become really sad, there's no more ice cream. And or just like make a tantrum or something like that. Well, then that's our own reaction. This we added upon what is. That is our own suffering that we created. So we need to see an empty bucket of ice cream as an empty bucket of ice cream, not my bucket that I ate, which I wish I had more, and I'm going to go to the grocery store and all this papañca. Or I hit my toe on like the fence, and it surprised me and it knocked me out of my awareness, and I just get angry and swear, and like I start bashing myself over because I lacked mindfulness, and I'm a monk and I should do better and I should be a more mindful person. And then I really dive into it and take it personal and identify with it, and it goes on and on and on and on, and it goes into my childhood traumas and all of these things. And then but all of that storyline, all of the spiral that I made you draw around that raw sensory data, that is up to us. So basically, the Buddha called that the second dart. There are two darts. There is the one that strikes you, that is the actual pain, for example. Like you hit yourself and it's painful. That is the first dart. Yes, it's unpleasant. But then you become angry and resentful and blame other people and start really cursing and taking it personal. Then all of this is unnecessary, added up, hurt, pain, that you are creating for yourself. And this, the second art, we have the choice. It's all up to us. And as we calm the mind down, as we purify it and start seeing things more clearly, we start to see that habit a lot better, a lot more precisely, and how it's actually really painful to get angry, to have resentment. And we don't actually need that. Great question. And in the end of this teaching, the Venerable Ānanda comes to the Buddha and he says, Bhante, just as a man overwhelmed and weakened by hunger would walk up to a ball of honey, where he would taste it, and wherever he would taste it, he would get a sweet and delicious taste. In the same way, Bhante, wherever one is, if a wise monk or a practitioner were to call to mind and investigate the meaning of this exposition of the Dhamma with discernment, he or she would find gladness of heart and peace of mind. Bhante, what is the name of this explanation on the Dhamma? Ānanda, you can remember this exposition as the exposition of the ball of honey. Using that sammaditi, using that wise understanding, that right view in your life, in your mind, in your meditation, will really help you, not taking things so personal. Whatever that storyline arises, just remember, it's just the storyline, it's just Papañca. Whatever the label is, that's what it is. And see how it comes with tension. And the mind is serious, it gets serious, and then it's like, gets frowny. And then just release, relax, smile, laugh at your mind, stop taking it so personal, and just return back to your object. And so this is the teaching on the 6 streams where the mind goes out. And when we stop feeding these streams, actually the water of our awareness starts to permeate our own bodies and our own minds. We can keep it and we can use it for more clarity and discernment.
I think I understand the necessity of eliminating and preventing these unwholesome states in the meditation, but I'm wondering more about how to make this happen in day-to-day life as well, because all these unwholesome states are states of the ego, and they are not just in the 6 senses, but for me I feel like they're in our DNA. They are part of the survival mechanism which is imprinted in our DNA. So the food and the sunlight and the water and the human touch and contact doesn't come to us. We need to go out there. We need to act upon our thoughts and to survive. So it's not so easy like it's in meditation to just let it go, because we need to do something. And yes, this is the first question. But if you have some advice,
Yes.
how to cultivate a more healthy ego or a more healthy way of dealing with these things when they come up in situations where we need to eat, we need certain human connection and love, and because this is what we know at the moment, that we are striving for here something beyond the ego.
Beyond what?
Beyond the ego, beyond
The ego, yeah.
like it's the unmanifest. So how to deal with the manifest, which
Yes.
builds our good body.
Yes. So this is like I am planting a seed tonight. And by the way, the speakers are facing towards you, so I don't actually hear that well. so I hear like a kind of a dull. And but I think I got most of what you said. So I'm not saying by any means that we should repress anything, or because a lot of what we're working with is, yes, has its root in even our own biology, you know. Some of the fetters to awakening, like the Buddha described that there's these 10 fetters that need to be abandoned for full awakening, basically. The first one is Sakkaya Ditthi, the blind belief in a personal self, or like just that idea of that there is an everlasting being, and this it's just the first fetter, you know.
Is it ignorance?
Sorry?
Is that ignorance?
Yeah, so all of these constitute ignorance, these 10 fetters. Of course, there's other ways to interpret that, but he would say the first is Sakkaya Ditthi, like to think that there's a being, to think that there's like an everlasting being through all of this. And then it is blind beliefs and rites and rituals leading to awakening, the awakening of the Buddha. So Sila Bhatta Paramasa, that's the Pali for it. And then you have Vicikicca, doubt in the teaching, doubt in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and the virtues of the Arahants, of the Aryas. So these three fetters, when they are let go of, somebody is known to be a stream enterer. So that's the first level of awakening. Then that person kind of taken his first few steps into the stream of Dhamma, kind of feels like knows where that stream is going, kind of thing. Then the second level of awakening is called Sakadagami. So once returner. So a once returner is known to reduce greatly the next two fetters, which are Kamaraga, which is sensory desires, and ill will, Vyapada. So these two will really go down quite a lot. So that's very unclear what that means, but the Buddha just says that. And then Anagami is understood as a quite advanced stage of meditation, or like of practice and development. Someone has actually cut away these two sensory desires and ill will, getting angry or even impatient is no longer possible for them. When they see there's no physical attraction possible for them. Their mind is so deeply steady that nothing can, like none of the sensory objects can pull it out of their minds, like can actually bring them out of that samadhi. But see, just there, and that's really kind of why I'm saying that, is that sensory desire, or like physical attraction, is built in our biology. You know, it's very deeply ingrained, and so we have, because of reproduction and biology and the survival of the species kind of thing, we're built to have that within us. But also, the thing is that it also creates a lot of problems. So I think everybody can agree with that. You know, there are beautiful things also that can come out of this, but I don't want to be, you know, like this kind of really like this is evil or whatever, you know. But anyways, for myself, I've tasted a lot of dukkha through that, and so I know where that can go, and I know now, like having these rules and like not purposefully choosing to be celibate and to devote myself to meditation and Dhamma is actually so blissful. And to actually keep that energy, like that energy is actually just energy. And to meditate, you need energy. And actually, it actually supports your progress, your mental development. And so if you keep wasting that energy, then you actually don't have it for a higher purpose. So, and that's, sometimes it sounds really intense for people that, you know, are not familiar with these principles, but when we keep that spiritual energy, because personally I like to see it more as spiritual energy, your life actually, instead of using it in just in one way, in that way, your life, like everything you're doing is more alive, and everything has more of that energy in it. And so the anagamis, for example, who actually are not even, you know, not even shaken by these things or attracted to these things, it's just that they're experiencing such a deep bliss in their mind, of that really beautiful poise. They're basically always in jhana. That's what it is. You know, nothing can knock them off from there. They're just locked in. And you know, that kind of happiness is really, really difficult to compare. Yet, in day-to-day life, I don't think it's wise either to, you know, to push away or to try to control this process. And so it's really, that's why we talk about wisdom. That's why we talk about slowly building, gardening our inner garden, and allowing things to grow at the pace at which they need to grow. Because you can't really force this. You know, it's like what I said tonight is more like planting a seed. And that's why the Buddha says, you know, if somebody were to frequently think about and investigate the meaning of this teaching, this is not like I've known this teaching for years now, and I still talk about it, and every time I read it again, I kind of like, it puts me back into that kind of perspective, and it brings me new understandings all the time. So it's not something that you just get like a big, all of a sudden, it all comes to you. So, and it's really important that you take the time and go through the gates that you need to go through. What I'm offering here is just basically tools, and I'm handing out the tools, and then you have the nice toolkit, and then whenever, you know, sometimes you're going to be doing something like a year later. Sometimes it happens quite often, like people write back to me and they're like, no, Bhante, like, remember like that teaching was like, it just hit me so hard, like blah, 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 blah. And you like, just email, like huge email, and like how they like all of a sudden they were doing something and it just like clicked in their minds. And so a lot of the Dhamma is like that. It just like, at the beginning you just plant the seed, and at some point all the causes and conditions come up. And
very first thing he said is like, when the mind becomes calm, then I was thinking it's like threatening our self, what we perceive as our identity, our self, because it's like going into the unknown. If there's nothing more to hold on to. Like the thoughts keep coming because this is what we know, what makes up our identity. And then if they calm down, then all of a sudden we realize there's nothing to hold on to anymore and it becomes scary. So
Yes.
we want to go back into the survival mode and what we know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think there's many aspects about that, and I think so. The very end of the path, for example, is one thing, and it's quite rare that people will get there. So like to completely like become an arahant, for example, to like become fully awakened. Like I don't know anybody, so and even in monks, it's not that easy. And the thing is that as in the lay life, the thing is that to survive in the lay life, you need a certain amount of bhava tanha, of wanting to become. And even the most advanced lay practitioners in the time of the Buddha even would only reach anagami because the further steps cannot be attained through by living life, like supporting a family. Like you need to make a living, and to make a living you need bhavatanha, like you need to figure it out. You need to get the money from somewhere, from someone, and whatever that's gonna take, but we also have to understand that there is a really big sliding scale of wholesomeness in all of this. So as a lay person, as a lay practitioner, and especially in this day and age that we live in, for me personally, I believe that it's possible to have very meaningful and profound practice, even though you're not like fully gone forth or whatever it is. My still to this day, my best retreat that I had was my 8-month retreat that I did at my place before I become a monk. And because I just had all the conditions come together, I had pretty much an empty house to myself. I could handle money. I could just go to the grocery store when I needed food, and it was pretty easy. I just like walk in, buy a cartload of groceries, and then drive my car, and then go back home, and that's it, And then I just have to cook for 2 weeks, and I would just, meditate all morning, and then like 4 or 5 hours, and then I would just cook, and I would cook for my mom too, and that was like my generosity. And she would be happy because she doesn't like to cook for herself, and so it would make her really happy, and then it would make me really happy. And then the afternoon I would just like study a little bit, listen to a Dhamma talk, and then meditate for another 3-4 hours. And so in the lay life, especially nowadays, I feel like there are opportunities like that that are actually really good. I know some people, like some of my friends, and they're not monks, and they actually can practice quite well. Of course there's always difficulties here and there, but if you're smart, I think you can figure out good ways to get around. I mean, I didn't mean to say that you're not smart. It was just like really just a purely positive thing, and just to use, because as a layperson you also have a lot of tools that we don't have, and so sometimes in the monastic life it can be hard just to find the right community. Just that is really impactful, because as monks we're very dependent on the communities we live in. And if you don't find a community that is supportive, that practices the same thing as you, it becomes a slug. It becomes really difficult because we also have rules and rules and rules and rules about chores that we need to do for our senior monks, our teachers, our Vinaya teachers, meditation teachers, the abbots, and all of these things. And if we start to do all these chores, we're just never going to meditate. That's just not going to happen. And there are places like this where that's it. Like monks are just basically doing chores all day, and it's nice. It's seva. It's like selfless service. But personally, for me, there's a limit to that. I went for it because I wanted to meditate more, not to just become a slave for the rest of my life. So I wanted to break free. And so it really depends also your style of, some people are more into this selfless service, and for them that's actually what they want to do, then great. And then some people are more into okay, I just want to meditate and, really calm it down. And I think as far as jobs and everything, there's always, there's jobs that are really a lot heavier on the mind, I'd say, and heavier on the Dhamma, that are further away and that are gonna cause maybe some problems because of virtue and things like that. But there are jobs that are quite blameless also, and you can aim for that and still make a living. And the world is still turning, and life is still happening, and you can also make a living by helping in the best way that you can, and that's very close to being blameless. Okay, let's share our merits and then we go. Page 213. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu.